Om Shanti. This is the slogan of the 5th of August. Close your eyes to anyone's weaknesses and make your mind introverted. Close your eyes to anyone's weaknesses and make your mind introverted. What a blessing to get from God directly this commandment, this order, this Srimat. Because seeing weaknesses is such a huge energy drainer. A drainer of the very energies we need to be able to move forward on our spiritual journey and to be able to be of use to God in His task of establishing a pure world. I've always felt that if God is telling me to do something, He is also giving me the power to do it. So it's a wonderful slogan. Close my eyes to anyone's weakness. So how will I do that? Because the habit of seeing weaknesses is so strong after 63 lifetimes of doing that. How will I be able to take the power that accompanies a commandment like this so that I can actually make the shift and turn around the damage or the losses to the soul that have come from these last 63 births? The reality is that there's a whole force working against my efforts to do this, to close my eyes to weaknesses. Baba was saying in today's Murli that Maya will make you forget this Baba who's in front of me to give me all the power I need to do things the right way. That this Maya is as almighty as God is, and that she's been ruling over me for 63 births. So, remembering God, taking power to overcome all the bad habits, really requires so much power. It's like leaving one whole energy field, actually taking ourselves out of one whole orbit of reality and getting ourselves into a completely different consciousness, a completely different orbit. Again and again, we have to introduce ourselves to the original version of the self, myself and others. This is introversion. You give yourself the introduction to the original version of the soul. Because to see weaknesses is to entertain a version of the soul which supports the falseness of the Iron Age. We are so polluted by the end of the cycle, but that's not the true me. I remember one definition I heard of ego. Ego is that kind of two-sided coin, which is expressed either through the superiority complex or the inferiority complex. With the superiority complex, it's the I and mine. at every level. I know, you don't. I know better. My way or the highway, as they say. So it leads to all that bossiness and controlling nature that many of us would know. Other side of the same coin is the inferiority complex. I don't know in a negative way. I can't do the feelings of worthlessness, not knowing my part, not feeling I have a contribution, which leads to a lot of comparing and a lot of even depression, loss of hope or faith in anything, everything, including the self. And there's a very interesting definition of depression. The world says that depression is the result of not attaining or accomplishing something that you set out to attain or accomplish. Whereas spirituality says, Baba's spirituality teaches us that depression would really be the result, or I could say the mourning of the loss of one's true identity. When we lose the true identity, we lose our seat of self-respect. We lose our self-respect. And I think that's the origin of this very damaging sanskara of seeing weaknesses in others and weaknesses in myself. It's like the lowest level possible in which to try and give yourself some value. You compare yourself to another, or you compete with others. And how you are compared to others is the way you give yourself value. And this is so unnecessary. And we can even say it's so sick. When I have a real value, the original version of myself gives me so much value. A divine child of God. Value which doesn't have to be acquired. It doesn't come through a diploma, a profession, a label, or anything external, but is just intrinsic to the eternal soul that I am. So we have to become very clever at reclaiming our seat, reclaiming the original version of ourselves. On a very practical level, two things that I do to just kind of break through that habit of the last 63 years, that foundation, false foundation of forgetfulness and misidentification. Anytime I find myself seeing a weakness in an other, I do something Dadi Jenki once recommended. She was sharing her own efforts to break this habit. She was saying that she would immediately sit down and write 10 virtues in that person. The way I've been working that little activity is even just to force myself to identify 5 qualities of that person really helps so much. Because anytime we focus on virtues and qualities, we're nurturing the whole energy field of truth. So that's one practice I've taken up. But another practice I do is if I catch myself seeing a weakness, I just repeat to myself this one line. Yes, and I also see the beautiful and the magical. And I think there's something really powerful in just repeating one line in such a way that there's just a different energy entering the circuits of the brain. And with enough repetition, the brain can actually change its patterns, charge itself differently. And a new program can be created. And of course, there are so many different lines that we can be feeding the brain in order to break its routine ways of its patterns. What does it mean when Baba says, only see the soul? I remember how another senior defined this task of seeing only the soul when I look at another. She was saying, to see the soul in another means to see yourself as a soul. And that's easier because we've been working on that. So just again and again to give to the mind these most simple points. Who am I? I am a soul. I am a great soul. See my role. Because as soon as I'm in the business of seeing weaknesses, I'm out of the partnership with God to create the pure new world. He doesn't see weaknesses, which is to say, although he might see them, they're acknowledged. He's not influenced by them. To close my eyes to weaknesses means not so much to deny that they exist, as much as it means not to be influenced by them. How can we be an instrument for God if I'm still being influenced by falseness? So, in one way or another, we have to keep creating clever methods to pull us out of one orbit and get us into this totally different orbit of God's framework of reality, where I'm able to see as He sees. Baba sees the weaknesses with the vision of the mother, the father. He feels mercy. He feels compassion. And his greatest weapon against these weaknesses in us is just to keep bringing truth. Against all the falseness, just to keep bringing that truth. Om Shanti.